way their 44 pillars look this year. They have lettering of GRRRR. Number 1, number 3. Grass River, 3 R's. Grass River Railroad. Why they didn't do G?
this. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to rumble?
Well, we can make a little interview. That'd be fun. It's raining. Hopefully, we don't lose power.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. How's everybody doing tonight? Let me find my cursor. All right, there you go. Well, let's see. We've got, hey, Robert. How you doing? Dwight's in here too. You run naked for. Brad Anderson just popped in. Good day, y'all. Hey. Adrian. Yeah, we got Joe over here on the panel so far.
What's going on, everybody?
Brad just popped in from Canada. How you doing?
Saying hi from the Ozark Mountains, from Ozark National Forest.
A little late for a Christmas tree, isn't it?
Never. I just put it up like a week before Christmas.
Hey, Dave, how you doing? He just popped in. Alrighty.
All right, cool.
Well, now we got what have we got? We got the Bill show next Tuesday, January the 14th, and then we've got my show again on Thursday, and we got a little surprise coming up at the end of the month, so y'all gonna have to stay tuned for that. There'll be a video out on it here in a few days. Andrew Gilmore, how you doing?
Well, it's not me dancing, so
No.
That's not the surprise.
Nah. Yeah. You got to take that tree down, Joe. Robert said his wife thought this was a pre-recorded because of Joe's Christmas tree. LOL.
Oh, it's the Christmas season all the way to probably June. It's Christmas until I decide to take the tree down.
Hey, Nathan, how you doing? He just popped in.
Nathan Delay?
No.
No, Neil Nathan? Oh, Neil Nathan. Okay.
Yeah, limping through malls with Nathan. He said his tree's still up too.
There you go. See? Pretty soon I'm going to have 4th of July stuff. I'm just going to have it on the tree.
All right, Andrew, as far as I know, you might want to see if there is a trademark there and try and get it off, because you shouldn't be having any real problems.
Rob says, don't be lazy to me.
Well, hey, Jeff. He just popped in. Oh, we had a good show last night. Everybody here the past few weeks been kind of talking about small layouts and what's good to start with. So, had a Fred E on last night with his. Well, he started out with a 4x8, and I think it's 4x16 now because he had another 8 feet to it. No, 4x8 on the end of it. Pretty much a switching layout.
It's the best idea. And what is great about building a small layout is that you can you're not a slave to something that's huge and enormous to the point where you get burnt out and you start hating it. and I've been there. It's not fun, and I'm like right now. I know just with remodeling the room, I'm not going to be able to right now build my 9 by 11 shelf layout. And but in the meantime, I am building a 5 by 1, so 1 foot in width, and the length is 5 foot diorama, double track main line, and has one of my father's uh, buildings that he scratch built, and mainly doing it for my weathering business, but also I haven't really done as much scenery in a couple in about 3 months. I haven't done as much track work in a while, wiring. So building a diorama, if you can't have a space for a 4 by 8 or something smaller, at least I'm able to practice and try out new techniques. So to start out small, it is the best thing. Everybody wants the huge, huge layout, and a lot of folks that I have witnessed and that I either talk to or watch on videos, either on YouTube, on DVDs, or even on social media, no one really started with a huge, like 30 by 30 foot room with a layout. Most of the folks that I know started with their first 4 by 8, and I'm on layout like 6 or 7, and I'm only 30 years old. I know there are a lot of modelers out there who, they're on the 15, 20 layout before they can have that big space if they have it. And a lot of people I know have the big layouts and they go back to the smaller because it's easier and more fun. So, to really go to something that's smaller, you you can super detail it as well as enjoy for what it is, and you can always change it. And it's not like you're changing a whole room or remodeling a room, and redoing lights, and because it does get expensive, and there's a finance to it too. Not everybody has that huge, humongous budget, and the folks who have those big layouts when they first start either have the financial means and the space and the time. If not only that, they also have multiple people working on it with them. So it's to start in as small as a diorama to something I could bring to train shows to advertise my business. From there, those skills, the new stuff I'll learn, because I don't really scratch build or kit bash buildings and these structures. Basically help rebuilding my father's building because it just needs a lot of work, and it's been sitting in a box for years, for years, for years. So like, it just, I just need some skills. I want to super detail it. I've never super detailed buildings before.
Yeah.
So this is a new skill for me to repaint, to weather this, and obviously rebuild it in certain ways. I want to put details inside, lights and everything. I mean, that's all it is, So for just doing that, I only made one tunnel in my lifetime. I love building tunnels. I think they're fun and fascinating. So I'm going to be doing something along the lines of making a tunnel on one end, and the other end is going to be an overpass. Never done an overpass before. Not sure how I'm going to make it, but the cool part is that I'm able to really, really learn some new skills, and that's the whole goal when you're starting out small, or if you're advanced modeler or intermediate modeler, or you just want to downsize from doing something advanced, do something small. You get to learn new stuff while doing it. Unlike Chris here, Chris has a humongous layout. It is awesome. It's really beautiful.
Hmm. I just want to say real quick, hey Gaffa, Ralph, how you doing? Ari, he just popped in. Let's see, somebody has something to say just now. Oh yeah, why are you, another good point about building a small layout is it costs less.
Absolutely.
Well, this also is a lifetime layout. This is not something I plan on finishing in the next couple of years. This is something I'm going to do over the next 15 or 20, hopefully.
And that's the other thing. If someone has a huge layout, they tend to rush it if they just because they're impatient. And I've been down that road, and it's not fun when you build everything and you're sweating and you blood, sweat, and tears goes into it, and but you're doing it half-assed and nothing runs well, and it becomes this disappointment and it collects dust, and all that hard work and money and time you put into it, it's for nothing. I've been down that road.
So how you doing, Chris?
What was that?
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful.
That's good.
We have one more piece of track to build, and then the quote unquote main loop will be done, and I'll start putting turnout motors in and get some power to it. So hopefully this time next week, I'm on call next week, but hopefully this time next week we'll have trains running around.
Oh, okay, that'll be good.
Hopefully.
Give everybody something to watch.
Yeah. But I have a couple of turnouts on order. I got 2 rights and 2 lefts coming. So 2 number 4s for the back, and then I have 2 number 6s for the front.
What'd you say, Andy?
Gentlemen.
Andy,
Joe. What's up,
I
Chris?
miss you, Andy.
Yeah, I haven't been on a lot lately, but
Yeah,
I've been busy.
talking about small layouts and building smaller layouts.
Yeah, I was listening too. I just made it in though. So yeah, if you guys listened to the most recent, well, I don't know if it's the most recent because I have a hard time keeping up with all of Lionel's podcasts. He has so many, but he has a yearly review with Joe Fugit from Bottom Railroad Hobbyist, of course. And one of the things they've been talking about this year, and they talked about it a little bit last year, best I remember too, is Joe Fugit's Toba concept, that one module approach, the one module approach, Toba. Which, as I've said before, my layout is sort of Toba, but I started mine before that, that was published. I didn't realize the timing on all this exactly. Joe Fugit said he first published an editorial in MRH, in Motor Hobbyist, in late 2015, and I started this layout about a year before. It's not a novel concept. The idea of building a layout that's somewhat not portable, not modular in the sense of Primo or otherwise, but in sectional components designed to be movable. But I had the same idea as the one module approach. The goal was to build a module and to scenic it and to progress. At one point, I'd only built down one wall. I had scenic, had trees on it, had track work, had a train running just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, which I shot some really crappy YouTube videos of before I ever moved on to go all the way around the room now. Also, in the same vein, my layout has grown in size all the way around the room and all that. And to the point, I was talking to Bill and Johnny last night about this, that I haven't done much in 6 months. I mean, I worked almost every night, not every night because work gets in the way, but I'd worked very diligently for several years until about 6 months ago. And then I just all of a sudden and near immediately got really, really frustrated. And I am frustrated, really frustrated right now. I think I found the ways around some of the frustration, but and I don't intend, I'm not frustrated to the point that I have any thought that I'm going to tear it out or do anything else. I just got frustrated with a few things that were difficult to solve. I've already found ways to solve most of those things, including moving to a more modern era that I'm going to implement. And now I'm just kind of waiting on the excitement, maybe, or the inspiration or something. I let it get me. But I had worked on it very diligently for several years before it got to me.
How you doing,
So,
Andrew?
Andrew?
Good morning, gentlemen. Finally. I've been trying, even the other normal chat room, every time I get in there, it says copyright violation, it's not available.
I don't understand that.
I have a video on my YouTube channel showing Andy's layout. So if you want to check out like just a nice tour of how he built it, and he has everything in parts and sections where you can see the what do you call it, like the cookie cutter basically. You can see all inside how he built it. It's really extraordinary, and just like me building a diorama, it's kind of the same concept. He built each section, and instead of stressing over the whole thing, even though at some points, like you said, Andy, you got frustrated, because it's big and large, but you concentrated on those particular sections of the layout to where it's super detailed and beautiful, and then you continue all along the whole way, almost like a modular layout. And a modular layout in a different concept than the normal way of building the benchwork for a modular layout.
But I don't, as I've said before, in talk with with others in here who do subscribe to the design it, do it in CAD, build all the benchwork, lay all the track, run all the wire, run it for some number of months or a year without doing anything else. I totally 100% agree with that philosophy of doing that. If it's your first or so layout and it's quite small, the moment you're talking about several layouts down the line, this is probably number 13 for me. I'm pretty sure it's number 13 over a lifetime of being a model railroader. I mean, of course, I haven't built one in well better than a decade now, but maybe 15 years when I started this one. But as you take on larger layouts, as you take on, and it's not even about physical size, it's about scope of the project. When you're talking about a large scope project, the idea, it also depends on what your goal is. If you're building your first layout, that should be a chainsaw layout, that you should go into it knowing that the cost of entry for all the parts and materials that are not reusable is the learning experience. That it's a clinic that you're putting on yourself to learn it, and you're gonna waste some of that effort. Your first layout is unlikely to be your lifetime layout. Go into it, learn a few things. Don't be so worried about destroying it, but build it in the safest way possible. When the scope of your layout's much like mine, where I wanted to control viewing angles, manipulate the viewer psychologically in ways to see it, I couldn't design all that perfectly in CAD. I had to lay it out, figure it out, and then change and adjust and modify. So
yeah, that's like my last layout I done. I think you've seen it before I had to tear it down.
yeah,
I did that in CAD. Fine. But when you actually come to practically do it on the layout, things don't always fit.
no,
Now you can use your CAD program to design it as a guide, but then be ready to adjust it when you come to actually build it.
right.
Yeah.
And I had a design. I had a rough design. It changed somewhat significantly as you get compounding errors, as it grows and as things change, as you develop the concept. The entire two walls of the layout are exactly like the original design, and then it starts to drift further and further from that original design as time goes on. But it's really hard to design in CAD for me. And I went to school for architecture years ago, to all 4 years of architecture and drafting in high school, then later CAD in college. I'm comfortable with the software. It's not a skill set to learn how to manipulate software. I could not figure out how to figure out the viewing angles and manipulate the human to the experience interface without having to do something one to one. I had better luck rough drawing a plan and then laying it out on brown paper, craft paper, one to one with turnout templates, flex track, and stacking equipment on it, piling boxes on it until I could figure out what would block the viewer correctly to try to get them to look at it from this angle or that angle. So,
All right, I've got a couple comments here real quick about one Ari up here moved back just a little bit. He said I have been fine tuning and reworking switching areas for the last year. That's when we're talking about size of layouts and all. And let's see here. Oh, by the way, Andy, check out Robert Holloman's comment. Let's see, Michael Conley, he's back home in Indiana. Hope that's good. New Ferris, he just popped in. And what was it? Where'd you go? Oh, Nathan. How big is too big for a module, as in one solid piece?
A module is 2x4, 2 feet by 4 feet, right? The
Well,
HO.
No.
okay.
Well,
So
thing of it is, we went to the fine scale show. They had modules up to what was it, 3x6, Andy?
3x6. Yep.
yeah, 28 inches is really common, and 30 inches is really common. The Sipping and Switching Society guys make them 28 and 30-inch modules. Fremo does not care as long as the track is in the dead center. So 30 is a quite common standard. I would set your rule as simply this: what can you get through a door, given the height of the scenery and scenic elements on it? What can you get through a door and turn and go down a hallway in the event you had to? So if you have a lot of scenery on it, if it's a fairly significant set of mountains and stuff, as I do on sections of my layout, stay below 6 so that you have some working room. Otherwise, if you have a Kansas or desert, Nebraska, whatever, or some kind of desert scene or urban scene that's more flat with removable structures, go up to 6 pretty easily.
Yeah, my model, what were they? They were 28 by 6 foot.
Yeah,
28
6
inches
foot's
by
a good
6.
size. That's a good size.
So I could slide and put them in shells when I was packing away. I think you've
Well,
seen that design ad.
oh, I loved it, and I love
Yeah.
the design you were working on for the new layout that you worked on in Scarb, I believe, quite a bit. We talked about. I love 6-foot length modules. They have a less breaks in them. 6 foot in HO scale, it is scale. 4 foot's a little more, a little more practical. But in HO scale, 6 foot gives you a very reasonable amount of turnout and switching components, whereas 4 foot, you may end up with a bunch of turnouts. You may struggle with turnouts around those section joints. 6 foot is a little more reasonable for the amount of switching track work and to eliminate, um, things lining up on the joints. Another thing that people forget that I think is a great idea is hollow core doors are spectacular for building toggle modules on. If you don't want framework at all, you can buy hollow core doors up to 4 foot wide if you special order them, and up to 36 inches. You just go buy a slab door for 25 or 30 bucks with no handle, no hinges, just a hollow core slab door. 36 inches are readily available, all the way down to a foot wide for closet doors.
The holocaust door in the club here are very popular. Lightweight.
Yep.
They reasonably pretty square, and they just buy trestles, like wooden horse ones, but they actually now have got extension poles they can put on to bring it up to a more workable height.
Yep.
They just flip it, and they got those door latches.
Yep.
So they butt the module up together, and the door latches go click, put them in place. And they might just have to give them a little bit of a tap left to right to line the back up a little bit. Away they go.
Yeah, man. And they're hard to beat. I mean, honestly, you just about, if they fit your sizing dimensions, you can't build, for the most part, you cannot build benchwork as thin, as dimensionally accurate, as rigid, as lightweight, and for sure not as cheap as you could use hollow core doors. And you can cut a little square out of one side, mount your tortoise or servos or whatever. They're very easy to work with. You can cut them and shorten them and rebuild them with a modicum of technical skill and a very few set of tools. And they're just super readily available. And it's hard to beat benchwork that's so quick and easy. It may take you a long weekend to build out a decent set of benchwork, but you can go buy 4 hollow core doors and have 30 running foot of benchwork thrown up, and you can have that benchwork up and mounted together in a matter of an hour or 2 tops when you get home from the lumberyard. So,
yeah, so all the guys they mount their turn out and their tortoises, and normally we normally put the bolt goes in for the door, not the handle, but the bolt, make a slot like that. And they have mount buttons in there, and that's their changer. So the buttons are actually flush inside the door itself. So when they just stack them in the trailer, they just slide into that. They don't worry about buttons or anything caught, and they just stack them.
yeah, I like the way they do the recessed buttons these days. It started out years ago with people taking spray paint and other bottle caps, turning them around backwards and inserting them and gluing them into the benchwork to recess the switches. Now there's people who make cups that are dedicated to toggle switches or to push buttons that are meant to be recessed that you could purchase or 3D print for a few bucks.
Yeah, Dave Pipers said he was thinking doing a 16-inch by 6 foot, get 3 out of a 4x8 sheet plus 2 2x2s for corners.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a good set of sizes all in. And I honestly, I wish I thought about 16 a lot, and I originally thought about 16. I ended up going 24 on mine because I thought I needed to for a few reasons. Plus, I was figuring it out more on the fly, and like as I've said before, one of the few mistakes I think I made is that the bench work is deeper, or the framework or the styrofoam. It's not exactly bench work. It's deeper than it needed to be in not everywhere, but in some places, and it really kind of bit me as I built all the way around the room and then was figuring out the peninsula. And my original plans, it would have been fine. But as my plans changed for the peninsula, the 6'9" dimensions become a problem. And 6 months ago, it really frustrated me because I was trying to squeeze that helix into that peninsula as well. I've now give up on when I found a way to make the helix work with me and Ralph and Robert and others talking on here. Joey, we talked about it. A bunch of us all talked about that helix, and I figured out I have a plan to make that work, but I'm not going to do it that way anymore. Because I've moved to the modern era, it forced my hand and forced my track plan a bit because of changes that were made in the town I'm modeling in the late 70s. So to move to that late 80s period, I have to incorporate a second Y. And in order to do that, I have to change part of the track plan. But what that gave me as a side benefit was the elimination of the helix.
Let's have a headache now.
It was.
Yeah. It was stressing you out a lot.
Oh yeah, I mean it was just really challenging because my minimum radius, I really wanted a 36-inch with easements minimum radius, which puts you at 40, 42, 44-inch, basic curve radius is all in, and that's tough in a 15 by 15 room. That was some serious compromise, but I have always achieved that roughly. My steepest or my sharpest curve radius on the main line is 34 right now, but the helix had to be 28 or 29, had to be, and that was going to control a lot of the rolling stock, especially in the 1950s era with the Pastor equipment, which I still hope to be able to model the 1950s, sometimes. Now what I'm going to do is just go up the wall. I'm going to take one of the backdrops down on one side, and I'm going to mount the track to the wall, and I'm going to put some supports up to make that 3-inch space, and then I'm going to put the backdrop right back up on top of that, and the track will go up behind the backdrop, come into this room, into my staging room and workshop, turn around, and go right back up on top of it, all the way back to the top deck.
Well, you need to take a look at Facebook because Lloyd just put up how he made his train disappear off the layout going into his workroom. He's got.
I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let's see, who was it? Yeah, New Ferris Railroad. He said my expansion is 2 4x4 set to make a 4x8. And let's see, Ralph said, Andy, it's too bad you insist so much on prototype.
I don't know. I mean, like everybody says, there are benefits both ways. I've always modeled non-prototype, exactly. I've always made a branch line or a what could have been. I even had my own railroad for years with when I was a teenager with my own labeled equipment. It was again a what could have been. It was a Knoxville, Atlanta, a line that had existed after the Civil War and had merged in, sometime in 1900 or something. And I just modeled it in the modern era, basically. So a lot of people do these what could have beens. I really like those. But this was my first attempt at modeling a real place and time, a place I really loved from a railroad perspective, and the joy of it is I don't have to try to figure out how to make it prototypical, or the thing that like Bill Baronic, the track planner, who correctly says this stuff that I'm about to say. He says lay all your track and operate it for a year. That way you can modify some of your track work without it being devastating to your scenery. That is a fine and a great idea. I support that. If you are inventing your track plan, I'm not inventing my track plan. The Norfolk and Western Railroad built this track plan and they operated it. So if it worked for them and they did not require an additional track or an additional switch or an additional crossover, if they were able to operate it, and I'm just too stupid to, then this is the wrong hobby. I should be able to operate it and get the job done just as the Norfolk and Western done and Norfolk Southern done. I know what tracks need to be there. And there's no there's no reason for me to be reluctant about scenery because whatever tracks were there are what's going to be on my railroad. There is no more or no less. There's not an extra switch, not an extra siding, and I'm not skipping any. So my track plan, I didn't have to come up with a track plan. All I had to do was figure out how to pile about 500 pounds into a particular type of sack like they talk about. But I just had to figure out how to squeeze it into a little bitty room. That's the only challenge is how it weaves around the room. But all the switches and the direction of the turnout, whether they're curved or not, the direction they're curved, it's all consistent on my railroad. The only thing I did is took a straight, somewhat. This is Appalachia, so there's not much straight. Um, it's just not model most of the right hand turns and model all the left hand turns so that it continues to make a loop. That's it.
Yeah, my dream layout was to build a scale model of the Dick Lake Railway in New South Wales. Because I actually worked on that railway as part time. I just walked along, cut branches and trees down. But I just never been able to find the room to actually put it.
Well, that's the problem is you've got to figure out how to squeeze a whole lot into a small. But I'm a big believer in these layouts. Like I can't think of his name right now. I always forget his name, but he's the guy who's hosting the platform on YouTube, which is the Model Railroad Hobbyist. I'm sorry, Trainmaster TV. Little live or not live, but yeah, yeah, the guy he's a Canadian fella, models the Canadian National or something. And him and a whole lot of other people have come after the same concept of what again that I come to naturally on my own of modeling a town, a not small layout. He's got a reasonable sized basement layout that models literally a few miles of track work.
All right,
It's to bring the focus down.
all right,
Bob
Andy.
Fallowfield.
Andy,
Sure.
where'd he go? Oh, Greg Hines. He said, Andy, you need them all in Z scale.
Yeah, but I would rather go to. I wish I could model an S. And I really seriously 6 months ago when I got frustrated, I come one days of switching to O scale. Actually, I have a few pieces of O scale equipment here, one of which that I bought 6 months ago, as I was toying with the idea of going to Proto 48 or O scale 2 rail because I wanted to figure out how to do that. I was going to give up on this space, go ahead and buy the building that I want to buy this or have it built out back this spring. Go ahead and move, make that commitment, and go to that. But even as I started thinking about what I could fit in, say, a 20 by 40 or so building, I still couldn't do justice to anything I would care about operating because it's all about what you care about. What you have to figure out is what you care about, what's important to you.
Ralph said Fallowfield.
Yeah, Bob Fallowfield.
There he
That's
is.
right. Bob Fallowfield, and and there's somebody recently was talking about the Fallowfield effect,
He's on that DVD.
and I think it's great. His layout is spectacular, and it's a concept he has. He's modeling one town, a one small town. It's probably 5 or 6, 8 maybe scale miles, shrunk down to a couple scale miles. So the selective compression is smaller. Whereas a lot of model railroaders I've heard about are trying to shrink down 500 scale mile or 500 actual miles, or even quite reasonable 100 miles. An entire division of a railroad from yard to yard is 100 to 150 to 200 scale miles, depending on how far west you go. And it's just too big, in my personal opinion. And it's all about what you want. There's nothing wrong with that. If division operations is what you want to concentrate on, then you need yard to yard operations. in my case, what I cared about was coal operations, loading, and that kind of stuff. The interchange operations of a second railroad operating at a helper district. I didn't need a yard to do that. So it gave me a lot more railroad. And the very first thing anybody talks about when they're designing their railroad is where's the yard go? And as soon as I realized that I could do away with the yard and be happier with it, it doubled the effective size of my railroad. And I'm modeling 18 scale miles eventually. I'm sorry, so I'm modeling 24 scale miles in six, or 24 actual miles in 6 scale miles, so a 4-to-1 compression.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a yard on my layout either. I have a fiddle yard that'll be underneath it, but I'm not actually, because you to do a yard justice, it takes up way too much room. I feel
Well,
a,
for sure, a class
a
yard.
modern day yard, they're
Yeah,
huge, you know.
a class yard for
So,
sure.
yeah, so I just made a fiddle yard on it, and then everything else is going to be industries and sidings and that kind of stuff. So
But
Yeah,
I think staging.
Even on John's layout, his yard is pass through, and it's between 16, 17 feet long, 18
Yeah,
inches
well,
wide.
it's roughly half his layout, a little less than
Yeah,
that, call it a third of the layout or something, is that yard as small as it is. And even that is nowhere near approximating a classification yard. It's a small town interchange or a small town yard, a local service yard where you could stop, break up a block of cars, and then the local could go about doing that work. Much like our own, Bill is, like Big Bill's layout is like that, which suits his style of layout to have that type of yard because it's New York City. It's all yards, yard to yard to yard. You have to have that. Classification yards, I think of as entirely unachievable. I do have a small interchange yard for the interchange operation, but that's more of an industry without a structure than it is a yard in the way that it actually fits into space. But a class yard, it would have took my whole house literally to
Yeah.
model that with any effectiveness. Now for staging, as Chris was talking about fiddle, that's the first thing I do on any layout. I have no interest in any layout in the absence of staging or fiddle yard. Personally, as an operator, because I want to operate, the absence of staging, I don't know how I don't have any concept of how to operate a railroad that is not ultimately staging to layout, if not staging to layout to staging.
Right. And that's what I'm doing with my design for the 9x11 layout. I'm going by Bob's design. And you know how I like to create vignettes. And it's really hard to do in this small space. So I took that idea and ran with it. And I'm going to have where the walls here, it's a big L shaped part that is going to be the whole town. And I'm going to have stub-in storage tracks for freight cars for the industries with I'm going to have a loop going around so I can run my major freights I want to run. But now it's also a class one picking up and dropping off within this industrial park where a short line, a fictional short line, is going to work all the industries. And it's basically the same idea as the Arkansas and Missouri Railroad here in Springdale. And they run within the small vicinity. They have like I would say like 8 to 9 industries within like the first 5 miles between the beginning of Fayetteville all the way to Springdale and up and a little further up from there. And basically, they do all the switching, get everything together. They have the little yard where they block their cars. It's like 2 tracks, 3 tracks. The main line's in the middle. It's like 2 and 3. I mean, 2 tracks or 1 track. And then they hook it up to bring it down to Van Buren to bring to the Union Pacific. So that could be your staging yard. Or you could have where you have a major class one railroad like I have, which would be Conrail for me, but for the Union Pacific, and they take those UP cars from UP or from the Arkansas, Missouri, their own cars, and they take them over the bridge, the Arkansas River to the Kansas City Southern, and drop off to the Kansas City Southern, and then they build the trains up all over in Fort Smith and Van Buren, and they have the overnight runs, which are the famous sand trains that run 3 Aces, the new ones, and they bring it all the way to Monette, Missouri. and that's the main line runs. But in between that, they have like 4 or 5 to 6 local runs that just crisscrossing all over Northwest Arkansas with all the local stuff. So like my design is kind of the same thing. One short line does all the different industries, so you can do all the operations. But then you have the class one railroad that's passing through it, and they're dropping off and picking up the cars for them. So you have two kinds of operations on a small layout and depicting one town, but it's in an odd shape. It's not like it's just 8 feet straight. It's going to be like 8 feet here and then like 6 feet over here. So
Look at
again,
us.
Yeah.
12, 13 feet out of it for one town,
All right.
and
Look
that
at
was
us.
the odd concept.
Yeah, Container Man 68, how you doing? He said my yard's 8 inches wide, 18 feet long, 3 or 4 tracks with multiple switches throughout. I'm going to have one mixed freight coming in, then the switches will break that mixed freight apart and deliver it to industries.
Yeah.
Right, but that's not. And the thing we've messed up as a hobby of explaining this from the prototype, and that the prototype knows quite well. Oh, let me add one note before I go on. Listen, us Andes have taken over the show. We've got a voting majority now. We have the quorum, so don't So you can't go against the Andes now. But is that we haven't thought enough about, or defined enough, or explained enough, or documented, or in the magazines enough, that a yard is not a yard. The railroad doesn't think about a yard as a thing that's done a way. There's classification yards and all kinds of different variants of that, from hump yards to blah, 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 to particular industry yards that go all the way down to a very small yard that may be 2 or 3 tracks at a small industry, and a range of stuff in between, from interchange yards to a single tailed service yard that goes out to these different ones. There's a wide range of those, and I think you can fit some mock-up of a bunch of those variants. But what most model railroaders think of when they say, "Hey, I want to put a yard on my railroad," what they think of is a class yard or a classification yard. So you bring a trade in, you break it all down, you split it up into 6 other trades, and you head out. And virtually none of us have the space for the yard, plus all the supporting facilities that you can't forget about, let alone enough staging and enough railroad to support all the trains that you would have to run to justify that class yard service.
Yes, Nathan, you're right. All the Andes are across the bottom. Coincidence?
That's Jerry,
you said,
man.
Andy,
That's Andy Mandering, or gerrymandering, or Andy Mandering. You're trying to get us down there where you can outvote us.
what's cool is today we have satellite and we have Google Maps. So take your favorite railroad, look above what the yards look like, your favorite place to rail fan, and see how the yards are built, and copy that. No one's
Go
going to have to
outside of the
copy
yard.
that if you can.
All right, Sparky's come up with a pretty good question here. That's Sparky 107. I need the panel to explain hidden yards. Why hide it? It's a great switching operation. When hidden staging, why hide? Yeah, why hide the staging yards?
Okay, if you're trying to operate prototypically a railroad empire, or not an empire, it's the wrong way to think of it. What we're trying to model, those of us that operate this way, is a section of a transportation system that spans a country. If you're trying to model an island that is isolated, that has a float barge comes in on one side, you pick up stuff, you go over, you dump off some freight, pick up some logs, whatever you're doing. It is an isolated railroad segment in the wherever, something like that. Then not having hidden staging makes sense. Otherwise, if you want to operate your railroad, in my mind, and I think we should probably do a show on this at one point, is how to linearize your railroad. You need to be able to draw your track plan out as a straight line. And if your railroad does not terminate at the end of it, it's not a branch line or something like that, it doesn't terminate, you need to access to staging on both sides of that railroad, because you're modeling this section in the middle. And these two sides have to be trains running elsewhere in the world. So as an operator, when you get a train as it's coming out of staging, You need every idea enforced into your mind that you possibly can. That train has been running for 8 hours as it headed away from Norfolk or something, headed towards you. You don't want to go pick it up out of your yard and go run it. It needs to come out under the layout as if it's been running for hours. You are taking control of it at a crew change point or whatever, and you're going to take over it for the responsibility that you have of that railroad, and then you're going to hand it off to get another crew on the other side. And if you're just taking it from yard to yard, that's not how the railroad works. The railroad builds a train out and runs it for hundreds, if not thousands, of miles.
Right. And another concept. See, Sparky Dave is a Conroe fan like me, so we're gonna go in these. Like Andy and I talked about multiple times, my ultimate idea and layout will be modeling Conrail's River Line from North Bergen Yard in New Jersey all the way to Selkirk, New York, all the way up the Hudson River. And I said, can you imagine what I'll have to do to replicate Oak Island Yard, which is one of the largest classification yards in Northeast? You can't.
Not possible.
It's not even North Bergen. It's humongous in the Conrail's days. And I rail fed when I was 8 years old in North Bergen for like 2 summers, 96 and 97. 97, 98 rather. And I said, well, if that's the case, and I really want to model in the Little Ferry, you can't do Little Ferry because it's a lot of trackage within the New York Susquehanna and Western, as well as Conrail, and so you'll have staging tracks where the trains were already made. You got to pretend they were made in Oak Island Yard. They were made in North Bergen Yard, which is Oak Island, North Bergen, Little Ferry, all the way up to Selkirk, which is the next big yard in Albany area, right? So you'll have, let's say, you look at the amount of trains that ran on the River Line. Let's say there's 25 trains. Okay, maybe 6, 7 trains from Oak Island Yard. The rest are some were from North Bergen Yard. The other ones will pick up a drop offs from Little Ferry, and you have that all in staging. That's hidden. They're ready made. You have your cards. You have your switch lists for stuff that has to be picked up, dropped off, or out the route from your staging all the way to your next staging yard, which would be Selkirk. Can you imagine modeling Selkirk Yard? Forget it. That's just as big as Oak Island Yard, not bigger. So,
and there's also multiple types.
Your trains are staged. That's
there's
staging
multiple
yard.
types.
Staged. They're ready there, ready to go. Right.
Yeah, there's multiple
types.
And
so you pick something out of Oak Island. Right. Yeah. A staging yard could be just 2 tracks. There's what's his name layout? The Georgia Southern. Is that am I right on that? Is it bedroom layout? Super about operations and details. He has a little pick up and drop, like a little lift where he just has 2 tracks, and those are the cars that came off of CSX. And when he operates, he puts it up. If not, he drops it down. That's why he has room to walk. So he keeps it up, and he'll take the cars out off that thing, of the little piece of wood there he has, and that's his staging yard. So there's a lot of different concepts to that too. But the feather division of BNSF, we got that guy's layout. He has Argentine yard, which is all staging. All the trains are just made up, ready to go and to put on the layout. It's like you're waiting for you're an actor and you're waiting to get on stage. It's not, you're up to bat as a baseball player.
Well, there's multiple types of hidden yards. A staging yard is one of those types. You can have if you have a railroad that has hidden yards, that has freight cars in it, and you're coupling up locomotives and you're switching stuff in that or whatever, that's not staging. That's storage or an unseated hidden classification yard or something like that. A staging yard in the model railroad terminology it holds complete trains as if they are in transit elsewhere on the system, and when they come from that staging out onto the line, they are coming as if they have been running out on the line. There's also fiddle yard. It's a very British concept that has came to prominence in the U.S. Modelers over the last decade or two as we've went to these smaller railroads. Fiddle yards are especially useful for small railroads like Toma railroads or other railroads. A fiddle yard is what the yard is behind me. I have 2 or 3 staging yards on my layout, and I have 1 fiddle yard. fiddle yard is meant for you to be able to get hands on to put equipment on and off the track. So I'm gonna put it in drawers underneath and put it up on the layout as I need to build trains. So if we're gonna operate tomorrow night, I would have been in here tonight pre-building the trains necessary to start that operating session. Then sometime through the middle of that session, I would come break a few trains down and build a few others. So every time I run my railroad, the trains are different, unlike the typical car cart and waybill operation system where the trains are somewhat repetitive.
All right, Sparky 107. I just don't like hidden staging. Why do it? To me, it's something great to model. Yeah, he's right about that. The
Because it's
real
not
real
staging.
real companies
Basically,
do it.
you're looking at the amount of space that you need for it.
Yeah, but
It's the same reason we build skyscrapers.
yeah. Why
Right.
You Run Naked 4 has got a really good short answer to all this. An operator small railroad needs a place to park those trains that aren't active on the line so they can be brought onto the layout as needed, and also a way to exit the mall scenery as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if
Hey,
it's
Jerry.
not hidden staging, if it does not represent trains that are many miles away, spread out in a line, it is not staging. It's hidden storage, or not hidden storage. It's storage, or it's an unseated classification yard, or it's something else. But it is not staging if it is not a hidden section of railroad that represents the rest of the world. There's another name for that. There's nothing wrong with having those tracks visible, but there's a different name for that trackage than staging. Staging has a particular connotation in model railroading, and it's just the wrong term to say that this idea of visible staging is the wrong terminology. There are other terms for that.
Right. No, it totally makes sense. Hidden is not on your layout. It's. I mean, some folks will scenic it. You know, and my buddy called it his staging yard, and it was a little scenic. We scenic it, but yes, it's mainly fiddle yard where we built trains by hand, not by throttle. So
Right, and that's
it's
fiddle. Fiddle yard typically means you're using an 050, and it doesn't have to be. It can be scenic, but if you are picking your train up and running it around the railroad, if you're in the same room with that visible scenic staging, then it is not staging.
right.
Again, nothing wrong with that. I have nothing. I have no condemnation for people who choose to do it that way, other than the fact that staging is the wrong term. Staging has a very specific connotation that goes back 60 years in our hobby. Staging is not visible to you when you're operating on the railroad, whether it's scenic or otherwise. But when you take over a train, it enters out of the layout from somewhere you could not see. What the idea is that that's Ohio or Nebraska or the other side of Australia. It's somewhere far away from you. And if it's right in the same room with you and scenic, you're losing all of the psychology associated with it being staging.
Hey,
Now,
I
if you
got
want
a
to call it
question for
something
you,
else,
Andy.
no problem.
You mentioned the term 050 for modern day model railroading. Should it be like G050?
Should it be what? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Like,
Right.
I was going to say, a friend of mine has a large layout. His staging area is actually in one room, his house. Middle, he bought a house just for his layout. That's also the control panel, his workshop, everything. The train leaves fiddle yard going out as a westbound. It's picked up by a driver and goes around this thing. When it comes back in the other way, it comes in as a westbound train. But if it goes that way, it's an eastbound train. You don't see, well, it's the same train, you don't see it. It just drops like around, drops a few cars around and sends it out the other way as a different train.
That's staging.
And the operator, the person can operate the train, doesn't know what's on it, until a train suddenly appears underneath a multi-track bridge into a short section of what you could call a yard, picks his train up from the yard with his work cars, driver cars, what do you like to call them, and away he goes.
Perfect. That's exactly the concept of staging.
Literally, an operating yard, full capacity, you've got to have about 12 feet. It's that big.
And it's the same. different concept with my layout. I don't have room for hidden staging, a hidden yard. Although if I really want to go down that road without getting yelled at, put a slight incline or decline going down underneath the layout to where I have trains stored, not going to happen. So and so you for operations you'll have to set up and make believe that everything is already there. So so and like you said, that like my stub end yard will probably be fiddle yard because some cars will be there already from the last operating session, and there may be cars already added, and you put an operation manual or your bulletin. You say, well, and a couple of nights ago, with the Conrail dropped off 4 cars in the middle of the night, so the crew took care of that already. So now that's one less step for us. But there's a crew coming in that has to take those cars out of the yard. So there's a lot of guys who don't have that luxury of having a yard, so they'll just take the cars off of certain industries, or put new ones on in different areas. But the same concept, like Andrew was saying, if you have the amount of rolling stock and you have that kind of layout where you can do that, you may not see that piece of rolling stock for like another month. All of a sudden you be operating, go, hey, I remember that car from the like two operating sessions ago. And the reason is because, like you said, Andy, a railroad, let's say you're mauling the Bronx, but it's coming from the West Coast. It's going to take a while for that car to go all the way down there and then all the way back. It may take a couple.
Oh, probably won't ever. Probably won't ever come back.
Right.
All right. Got one here. Michael Connolly said, "Wait, you can't be in the room to call it staging." My wife is going to be ticked when I start petitioning the basement. And I'll give you guys 10 more minutes and then we're going to wind it up.
It doesn't have to be in another room. Doesn't have to necessarily be under the layout. The idea is a psychological idea. And by all means, 2 points to make about it. First, there's nothing wrong with not having staging, proper title staging, capital S. Having a fiddle yard. If you have a small layout, you don't have staging. I don't care what you're doing, it's not staging, probably. Unless it's a fiddle yard or it's storage or it's whatever it is. It's a cassette. I think cassettes are really good that are often a British concept. If you have a larger layout, then you may or may not have staging. I think that as soon as you get a large layout, you should absolutely have staging. You just need it to not be visible to your crews that are operating. They should see the trains, not in a big row. They shouldn't see all the rest of the trains. They should not see all those trains at all, and only see it when it's coming out onto the layout. However you choose to hide that, whether that's behind, I've seen plenty of really awesome layouts where they have the shelf, and then they have a set of building flats back here, and an industry here. They have a couple tracks behind those building flats that hold complete assembled trains with power on them. That is technically staging. That meets the definition of staging. Staging is a complete assembled train, not visible to the operators until it has reached your section of the country. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with building a layout that has something other than staging that is some type of storage, fiddle yard storage or otherwise. But staging has a particular description that we mean in the hobby, and to say that what you've got is visible staging is to say that the word fiddle yard or storage yard or some other yard doesn't mean anything. It just messes the terminology up.
Right. It's a literal thing.
It is. Staging is the and it has a bit of a terminology. It comes from the play industry, I suppose, but it's the stuff staged, right? Stage left,
exit stage right.
That's right. Left of stage and right of stage as they prepare to enter the stage, thinking that your stage is one small section of a city street or something. And what you want your visitors to think, and in our case, our operators and participants to think, is that little piece of city street or that little piece of railroad exists all out into the rest of the country. And to do that, You don't want all of your actors standing visible on the stairs and in the aisles, walking up on the stage as they're supposed to participate in the play, because then you know exactly when Juliet's coming on because she's number 2 in line. If we hide all that stuff, then the action and the whole plot has to play out only in front of us, just as you're a rail fan. You don't know everything that's going on the rest of the railroad. You see what's on the small section of railroad that you are there to rail fan or participate in.
Right. And I've seen layouts where they have the full yard. It's there and everything, scenic buildings. I mean, the full yard, and then you see the main line go off in the distance, and then there's just stub ends against a wall, and it's mainly showing that the train is built up on the other side, and it's going to continue somewhere else, or the trains start there because there's a crew change. So instead of it being hidden behind a wall, it's scenic and everything. The train is there. You see the whole train. It's like if you're driving in one of those vehicles, PTI vehicles, and you stop. There's your train. It's ready to go, but you got a red signal. You're waiting for dispatcher because you're on duty as of right now, and you just got to wait for another train to pass or whatever the heck they need from you.
Yeah, a friend of mine, he's modelled the old-fashioned, well, they call them the old red rattlers, no passenger train. When I say red rattlers, it's a rat. It's a double main line, like passenger transport. But each end of the line, you just got a simple Y.
Gotta run a little early. I'll see y'all on another night.
All right, Chris, have a good one.
It goes off the end of the layout, still in sight at a station. The driver there waits 10 minutes in real time and comes back the other way. And all the freight trains that are using that same main line, that's your main line, they have to make sure they're out the bloody way. Right? So they've got to pull in the siding, work whatever they've got to do, then they might have to move between trains onto the main line, up the next yard work, but they've got to keep the main line clear at all times. Now, you don't see passenger trains either end.
Huh.
Well, you do, but in theory you don't, right? They're just two stations.
And
all right, you got 4 minutes.
The diorama.
You got
like
4 minutes.
Building, tunnel on one end, over passing the other. But you don't know where that train's coming from or going. It's just that moment, right in that diorama, you see it.
Yeah.
Well, and this concept of how we build modern layouts has been in progress in pieces all since the very early days of the hobby. Go all the way back to the very beginning when Frank was talking about, the stage that was the layout and his first off layout staging per se, all the way back in the 1940s to John Allen, who did not have staging on his layout, but operated without staging, which is fine if you so choose to do it. It's John Allen, the master, did it that way. Then you had like Frank Barrow when I was growing up in the or like in the 80s, probably in the 80s, I think. Frank Barrow was talking about the domino concept. That was a construction methodology. And then Tony Custer wrote a series of articles in Model Railroader about the LDE, layout design elements. And if you're building something like what I think you're going to be going for, Joey, the LDE concept, layout design element, built in a TOMA form factor, kind of, would probably be what I would go with and probably what I should have done on my current layout. Instead of trying to build a whole layout, just build. The LDE is just a scene that you hook staging or fiddle yards to either side of.
And then you got what I'm going to try to start to ramp up. It's called hub and spoke.
But what you're doing is basically the same concept. Well, I mean, you're building modular layout, which is basically like a domino. The domino concept that Frank Barrow kind of popularized was taking everything the modular guys were doing and bringing it to whole permanent or semi-permanent layouts. And what you're talking about is this one thing that all the rest of the transportation system you don't have to think about. You get to focus on one thing, and how everything else comes to it is out of your mind. How does this one thing get to operate?
All righty. Well, I'll tell you what. Go ahead, Andrew.
I think the best layout I've seen so far is one gigantic size time saver. The center of the layout was a time saver hub. Each of those areas where you store your car was actually another layout. And it might have 30 or 40 different industries on a whole different branch line. So you had to get the train from one branch line through the time saver, and you only had so much room. You could only take so many cars at any one time. Get rid of them, switch around, and it was all done with just one locomotive.
It's all about what you're trying to do.
Right.
Whatever makes you happy, whatever floats your boat. My only discussion was we could probably do, to use the right terminology, but whatever makes you happy, you're a success in the end if you're happy. My only debate is we have terms for those things.
Okay.
And the detail on this layout was unreal. Even the rusty garden sheds. Way to go, Johnny.
All righty. Well, I'll tell you what. We're coming to the end here, so I've been asked to do a wrap up here. So, Michael Conley, y'all talking about staging and all like that. He said, "That's what I do. I have a relatively small layout, 4x12, but hide the fully assembled trains behind scenery, assembled by the yard switching as an operation. The yard is over there." Dave Piper said T-4 minutes. So anyway, let's see. Sparky has asked, what is my take on hidden staging? Do it or not? Well, if you got the room, do it. Because, I mean, like Andy and all them say, staging is just a place to hide trains that are either coming in, going out somewheres, or they're coming in from somewhere. So, yeah, you really don't want to see them. You run -4. And I thought mile railroading wasn't dramatic. He's laughing.
Has its moments.
Oh, Michael Conley, that was fun, guys. I'm going to call my visible staging the Andy Yard. Question is, which Andy?
See, there you are.
And I still think we ought to coin
That's
that term
next Thursday's topic.
50.
We do need another. Yeah, that's right. We've always said 050, but what about the diesel era modelers? Yeah, there is a GVO 50 or something. I like it.
Alrighty. Well, we've had a good show tonight. Appreciate everybody in the chat coming in. Appreciate everybody here on the panel too. Joe, Andy, Chris. I'll put Chris at the end so I get a different name there. Don't forget, January the 14th, that's going to be the Bill Show. That'll be next Tuesday night. And then on Thursday will be my show. So, and don't forget, we do have a little surprise coming towards the end of the month. So there'll be a video coming out on that in a few days. I think everybody's going to be rather interested in this, and a little surprised too. So, yeah, it's going to be a surprise, all right.
Yep.
But, and by the way, Big Bill's not getting fired. There's no way he's leaving.
You won't let him.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Appreciate it. Have a good weekend. Stay safe. And we shall see you actually next Tuesday for the Bill Show. So y'all have a good night, and we shall see you later.